Now, what exactly these apex triggers are? I'll not give you a definition of these triggers, but we'll understand the triggers in a simpler way with the help of the analogy that I'm going to use. This analogy is something that we'll be using consistently in our next coming classes, so that way we would be able to relate to this triggers as a concept in a better way, and we will be able to retain that information for a longer time. Whenever we need it, we can recall that with this help of this example. The analogy goes like this. So let's say I have a apartment called A. This apartment name is A, and there is a security guard or a watchman who is taking care of the apartment. So let's name the security guard as S for simplicity. The job of this S is to make sure that this apartment A is safe from the intruders or any thefts that are going to be taking place. So he is the person who will be making sure that he monitors that apartment, and he will question the people who are entering that apartment. If there are new people, he will take the next steps to make sure that he or she takes the details from that particular person, and upon authorization only, he will allow that person inside that apartment. In short, he is responsible for the security of that particular apartment. Now, let's take another apartment within the same area called apartment B. This apartment B doesn't have any security guard. So what would happen? Any intruder that comes in or any new person who is entering this apartment will not be cross-questioned, and he or she can directly enter into that apartment. So there is no kind of a pre-check or any kind of a details that are being taken from that person to make sure that if that person is really in for meeting a person, or he or she is entering this apartment for a reason. So there is no person at person B who can check this information whether that person who is visiting this apartment B is a resident of that apartment, or he or she is a friend or a colleague of a person who stays in that apartment B, or he or she is in for a robbery. So there is no checks that are happening at apartment B. So the difference between these two things is there is a person who is taking care of this security of this apartment. Now, let's take few scenarios and the job responsibilities of the security guard called S. The job responsibilities of security guard S goes like this. If there is a new person comes in, the security guard would take their details of where they are coming from and what is their phone number and purpose of the visit. If an existing person or a resident of this apartment A comes in, this security guard would wish them. Let's put this as wishing the resident of that particular apartment. New vehicle comes in, the security guard would take the details of the vehicle, like the license number and who is coming from it. These are the few responsibilities of this security guard. Now, at the end of the day, why is he doing this activities? Because he wanted to make sure that the security of this apartment is intact. Now, if you see here, the security guard called S would be continuing to do his work, and he will only act upon if there is an event that happens. If you see here, we have noted down 3 events. What are those? If a new person comes in, this is an event that is happening. What is this event? A new person entering into this apartment is an event. So what is happening then? Security guard would take an action when that event happens. In this scenario, the event is nothing but new person entering into the apartment. What is the action? Action is nothing but taking the details of that person to understand to which flat this new person is going to. So that way, this watchman would be having a clear understanding that this person is going to visit flat number 202. What this watchman can do? Watchman can basically ring that 202 apartment person and ask if this person is expecting the new person that is entering the apartment. If the answer is yes, he will send that person. If the answer is no, he would ask additional details from the new person, and upon authorization from the person that who is living in 202, he would allow this person to go inside. If none of that happens, he would ask that person to leave because the person in 202 is not expecting this person. Now, what is the second event that we have talked about? If there is a resident who is entering into the building, just because this watchman knows that person who is living in that building, he would wish that person. So this is a action. What is the trigger point? Trigger point is a resident who is living in that building is entering into that building. That is a event, and an action to it is wishing that person. It could be something else, maybe having a chit chat also be an action, but for timing we are restricting it to wishing that person itself. Another event that we have talked about is a new vehicle entering into the building. Since there is a new vehicle entering into the building, now watchman role is to make sure that the security of the building is intact. So he needs to make sure that the new vehicle that is entering into the building is a normal vehicle and it is not there for creating a chaos. What he will do, he will go there, he will do a quick screening of that vehicle, and then only he will allow that vehicle to enter into the building. So if you see here, entering a new vehicle is an event, and a trigger, an action to that is checking or screening that vehicle so that there is nothing inside that vehicle that might cause a harm to that building people. Now, if you see here, wherever there is an event, there is an action that this security guard is taking. If you look at this scenario B, which is apartment B, where there is no security guard. Now, if you look at the same events here, event 1, a new person entering into the building, even though there is an event that is there is no action because there is no security guard there. 2, even though there is a resident who is walking into that building, again, there is no action, even though there is an event is there, but there is no action that is happening. 3, if a new vehicle enters into the building, then also there is no action because there is no person to act upon that event. So if you have understood this example, you have pretty much understood the reason why we would write a trigger. The reason we would write a trigger is to basically act upon an event that is there. If you see here, even though there are events happening in apartment B, there is no person to act upon those events. Whereas in A, the same events are being looked or monitored by a person called S, which is nothing but our security guard, and he's acting upon them. Let me ask you one question. Is S responsibility is to look after the events that are happening in B? The answer is no. Because S is being recruited or posted at this apartment A to make sure that he's performing his roles and responsibilities in apartment A and not in apartment B, because he's been posted at a location saying that this is your security parameter or this is what you need to do. B doesn't have that, so that is why any event that is happening here that is not being acted upon. Now, comparing this scenario A and scenario B, we can come to one understanding, which is nothing but the security guard is acting like a event listener. What is event listener? He is there continuing to do his work, and he'll act upon an event whenever there is an event that is occurring. So in short, this watchman continues to, or this S person, the security guard, would continue to do his work, and he'll stop his work and act upon an event that is happening. Event could be a new person entering the apartment, or a resident entering an apartment, or a new vehicle entering into an apartment. His job is to listen to the events that are happening, or his job is to basically look out for events. If there is an event, there is an action that he needs to perform. So same event listener or a security guard is absent in your apartment B. Point number 1 is this watchman as a event listener will act upon the events based on the standard operation procedures or SOPs. Depending on whatever the instructions that he got, he'll act accordingly. Whereas in option B, there is no such event listener. So even though there are events happening, there is no action happening after that. Point number 2 is this event listener are very specific to an apartment. If you see here, the security guard is very specific to apartment A. There is no security guard for apartment B. So that means these event listeners are very specific to a particular area or to a particular apartment. Those are the 2 points that we can understand from this example. Now, if you ask me what exactly is a trigger is, trigger can be related to this watchman. So triggers are nothing but an event listeners. Depending on whatever the code that we write, it would execute that piece of code according to the event that has been fired. So if you see here, whenever there is an event that is happening, security guard is acting accordingly. So similarly, your trigger also, if there is an event that happens, it would execute the code according to the logic that has been written inside it. So that is point number 1. From this example, if you need to correlate with the Apex triggers, think of your Apex trigger as your watchman or a security guard. Depending on what are the instructions that you have given to him or her, the watchman would act accordingly to the actions that are happening. In your trigger also, you can write a logic. Whenever there is an event that happens, this is your action that you need to perform. In your trigger, you can write that. Can we act upon an event that is happening in apartment B? The answer is no, because there is no watchman as a trigger, which is there to act upon the events that are been firing. So that means that brings us to the second point, which is nothing but triggers are object specific. If I write a trigger on an object called A, that trigger will only listen to the events that are happening in object A, but not on object B. So even though the same action is happening on object B, you cannot expect the same action performed on object A in object B. So that means if you need the same action to be happening on object B, you need to go ahead and write your own trigger in your object B. So point number 1, Apex triggers are nothing but event listeners, and option 2, your triggers are object specific. Those are the 2 points that you need to understand from this example. As per the definition of what exactly is an Apex triggers in Salesforce, Apex triggers enables us to perform custom actions before or after an event to earn records in Salesforce, such as insertion, updation, and deletion. That is the standard definition of what exactly your Apex triggers are. So we have understood what is Apex triggers, and we have also understood why we need an Apex trigger. Why we need an Apex trigger? Because we want an action to be performed whenever there is an event that occurs. So that is the reason why we will use triggers. And we have also understood what exactly triggers are. Now, if you look at this entire discussion so far, we have talked about so many things as events. We have talked about something as actions. For time being, let's park these actions aside and let's understand what are the events that are happening in our actual Salesforce.
Hey guys, if you like this video, do like, share and subscribe to SFDC Quest.